The wind moaned low across the white Wyoming flats, dragging old snow like sighing sheets across the ground. The cottonwoods stood bare and brittle, like the bones of something long buried. Nothing moved, not even the birds. Just the hush of February, and the weight of a sky gone pewter with a promise of another storm. Wicasa moved like shadow through it. He didn't rush. He never did. Snow creaked beneath his worn moccasins, and a rabbit hung limp from his belt, its blood cooling fast in the cold. His breath rose in clouds, but his face stayed still. Quiet was his home, and this land, half hunting ground, half exile, was where he listened best. That's when he saw the smoke, thin, wrong, curling not from any trapper's camp or wintering lodge, but out past the bluff where the trail broke south. He narrowed his eyes. His people didn't come this far west. Settlers, then late travelers, or the kind who'd run from something. He turned toward it. It took the better part of an hour, picking through drift and slope, to find the broken wagon. One wheel was half buried in the snow, snapped clean. The horses, one gone, the other stiff and crumpled, had clearly panicked. A scatter of crates lay across the slope like dropped bones. And then the movement, small, behind the canvas tarp. Wicasa stepped forward with a hunter's caution, but he called out, too. Not words, but a low hum, something to tell them he wasn't here to hurt. The tarp shifted. A rifle peeked through. Who's there? The voice was hard, wary. A woman's. Not enemy, he said, slow and even. You need fire. The pause stretched. Then another voice, softer, quivering. Mia, please. The rifle disappeared. A tall woman emerged, blanket wrapped tight, face pale from cold and long vigilance. Behind her, a younger one sat slumped, cheeks flushed and hair damp with sweat. Wicasa could tell from 10 paces the girl had fever. The tall one held herself like a frontier mare, lean, proud, half-starved, and still willing to bite. Her eyes narrowed on him. Are you Cheyenne? He nodded once. She looked like she wanted to spit, but didn't have the water to spare. We're fine. No, he said. You're not. Silence hung heavy. Then the younger girl coughed, a hollow, cracking sound that pulled her sideways against the wagon wall. Mia. He knew her name now, turned back fast. Her jaw twitched. He could feel the pride fighting the fear. Wicasa didn't wait for permission. He walked to the side of the wagon, stooped, and began gathering dry twigs from beneath a nearby cedar. His movements were practiced, quiet. Each motion made with the deliberate grace of a man who knew how to calm both horses and scared women. He didn't speak again until the fire was crackling and the younger sisters, coughing, had quieted. You need heat, he said. And broth. We have food, Mia replied sharply. You have frozen beans and pride, he answered without heat. That shut her up. May. Her name came when Mia whispered it, beside the fire, drifted into a doze, shivering now and then. Wicasa used his coat to prop her up, a bundle of furs folded gently beneath her neck. Mia tried to protest, but May murmured in her sleep something like warm, and her sister didn't argue again. Wicasa stepped back after that, sitting cross-legged in the snow a few feet away, silent as a tree stump. He didn't push, didn't ask, just tended the fire and kept watch on the horizon. Mia studied him through narrowed eyes, her face taut with distrust. She was beautiful in a hard kind of way, the way riverbanks are when spring floods haven't softened them yet. Lines of worry cut deep, the kind that didn't come from vanity or age, but from holding too much in for too long. You alone? She asked finally. Yes. You live out here? He nodded. Cabin 2 hills north. She stared at him for a long moment. Then her mouth tightened. You'd best be on your way. We'll manage. Wicasa didn't answer. He simply looked at May, pale and curled small beside the fire, then back to Mia. The message was plain. He would leave when he knew she'd survive. The wind picked up again. The sky bruised darker in the east. Storm's coming, he said. Your wagon won't hold. Mia drew her shawl tighter. Her shoulders were trembling. She looked down at her sister, then over at him. The kind of look that held 2 centuries' worth of warning and 2 minutes' worth of need. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Her voice was quieter now. Less bark, more bone. Wakasa didn't blink. "Because no one else will." The fire hissed softly. May's breathing grew easier. "I'll go at first light," he added, standing. "Leave water. Broth too." Mia stood as well, but not to argue. Just to watch. To mark how he moved, not like a thief or a brute, but a man who knew he wasn't wanted and still chose to help. She didn't thank him, but her hands clenched the blanket a little tighter, like something inside her was thawing too fast, too soon. Wakasa turned from the fire, the snow beginning to fall again in small, lacy flakes that barely made a sound. Mia's voice followed him, low and uncertain. "What's your name?" He paused. "Wakasa," he said. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Mia." No more passed between them. But as he disappeared into the trees, the smoke from the fire coiled up into the sky, soft as breath, warm against the cold. And in the quiet space between two snowflakes, something small had shifted. Something worth returning for. Dawn came, without color. Just a gray smudge pressing against the frost-blurred canvas of the world. The fire had died sometime in the night, and when Mia stirred, her fingers were so stiff she thought them broken. She sat up slowly, brushing snow from her skirt, and turned to check on May. Her sister's lips were chapped and pale, breath shallow. Her cheeks still burned hot with fever. Mia pressed a hand to her forehead, heart thudding. She whispered her name once, twice, but May only shifted, murmuring nonsense. The broth was gone. The warmth too. Only ashes now, and a sagging tarp that let in wind. Mia cursed under her breath, rose, and stepped outside the wagon. Wakasa was already there. He was crouched by the fire pit, rebuilding the embers with patient hands. Beside him, laid neat and quiet, were bundles. One of firewood, one of food, another wrapped in a hide, tools maybe. His breath puffed in clouds, but he didn't look cold. He didn't look anything. Just steady. "I thought you said you'd go," Mia said, voice brittle. He nodded, without looking up. "I did." "Then why are you still here?" He turned then, eyes catching hers. Not confrontational, just calm. "Because she's worse." Mia looked back, toward the wagon. "I can handle it." "She needs warmth. Proper shelter." Mia shook her head. "We're not going anywhere with you." "You won't go anywhere at all, not today." A silence stretched between them, tense as a pulled rope. "She just needs rest," Mia insisted. "And food." "I can." "She needs eat," he said again. "And something for the fever." Mia didn't answer. Her shoulders sagged, and she looked away, jaw tightening like a hinge about to snap. Wakasa stood, slow and deliberate. "There's a cabin," he said. "Mine. One ridge north. One night. You can leave after." Mia didn't reply. He turned, started walking. She cursed him under her breath. Then she went back into the wagon, stared down at her sister's too still form. She pressed a hand against May's chest. The girl's skin was damp with sweat, but her breath was fading thin. Half an hour later, Mia was dragging her through the snow. She didn't ask for help. But when May's legs gave way and the limp body slid sideways, Wakasa appeared beside her. No words. Just lifted the girl like a bundle of reeds and carried her with arms both gentle and unshakable. The cabin sat nestled in the trees, half hidden beneath pine and snow. It was small, made of weathered logs and mud chink seams, with a thin twist of smoke rising from the stone chimney. Inside it smelled of sage and dry meat and clean, cold air. There were no ornaments, no decorations, just function. 2 bedrolls, 1 stove, and a wooden table worn smooth with years. Wakasa laid May down beside the fire and placed a wet cloth on her head. He said nothing, only worked. He made tea from willow bark, wrapped her feet in hot stones, and left Mia to sit beside her sister while he stepped out to tend the horses. Mia didn't say thank you. Her pride was an iron hook in her throat. As the afternoon slid into gray dusk, May began to sweat more heavily, then breathe easier. Her lashes fluttered. She murmured Mia's name and turned her face toward the heat. Mia sat back, let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That was when she saw it, hanging near the stove, half covered by a length of old cloth. A coat. Not made for snow. Not made for war. It was a settler's jacket. Worn, patched. Stained with something dark near the sleeve. She didn't touch it, but she stared a long time. Wakasa returned before dusk. He set a tin plate of broth in front of her. She didn't move. "You used to live with settlers," she said. He didn't answer at first. "Why?" He shrugged. "Didn't belong where I was born." "And you belong there?" He looked out the window. "Long enough to learn I didn't." Mia sat straighter. Did someone hurt you?" He didn't flinch. Just said, "Yes." The words settled like a stone between them. "And you still helped us," she said, her voice thinner now. "You are not them. Some would say we are. Some are wrong." A knock interrupted them. Not a polite knock, fist-heavy, familiar. Wakasa crossed the room slowly. Mia stiffened. Outside stood a trapper, rough-bearded and red-cheeked. He looked at Mia, then at the bundle by the fire. His eyes narrowed. "Well, hell," he said. "That's what folks in town been whispering about, ain't it?" 2 settler girls ran off with a Cheyenne buck. Mia's face flushed hot, her hands tightening on her lap. "We didn't." "Didn't what?" the man said, loud now, grinning without kindness. "Ain't none of my business. Though I wouldn't want to be you when the folks in Saddle Hollow get wind." "We needed help," Mia said. Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "He saved my sister." "Sure he did." The man looked at Wakasa again, lips curled like he'd stepped in something foul. "You gonna keep him, then? Or pass him off when you get bored?" Wakasa said nothing. Not a muscle moved. The trapper spat in the snow. "Tell you what, girl. You're prettier than most up there. But folks don't forget." He left without another word. The silence that followed was vast. Mia rose, walked outside. The snow was falling again, fine flakes that vanished on her skin. Her breath steamed. She didn't know what to do with her hands. Wakasa followed a moment later, setting her coat gently around her shoulders. His fingers brushed her neck, then withdrew. "I didn't ask for your help," she said, quiet. "No," he replied. "You didn't." She turned to face him. His eyes didn't demand. They just saw. "I was engaged once," she said. "Back east. He called it off when my father lost the land. Said I was too severe. Unfit for gentleness. That was the word he used." Wakasa didn't smile, but something softened around his mouth. "You kept your sister alive," he said. "That is gentleness." She blinked once, surprised by the ache that rose. "You should go in," he said. She nodded. Later that night, she watched him from the firelight, how he sat near the stove, carving something from wood, his face lost in shadow. Not once did he look at her with hunger, only with patience, like he knew the world broke people differently, and that some wounds didn't like being seen. May slept easier. Mia didn't. The next morning, when she stepped out into the snow, the air smelled of thaw. Wakasa stood at the ridge, watching the trail east. The wind tugged gently at his coat. She stood beside him. "We'll go today," she said. He nodded, but neither of them moved. The third night in the cabin brought a silence so complete, even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Snow had buried the trail behind them, and the fire within cracked and hissed, warming the walls that held 3 strangers closer than they meant to be. Wakasa worked quietly by the table, whittling a small figure from juniper wood. His hands moved with careful intent, drawing shape from grain like it had always lived inside. Beside him, May slept curled beneath a buffalo hide, her breathing soft, her cheeks no longer flushed. Color had returned to her lips. Each breath she took now belonged to the living. Mia sat across from him, half shadowed by firelight. She'd offered to mend the loose seam in one of May's skirts, and now pretended to focus on her stitching, though her needle had stopped moving some time ago. The light shifted. Wakasa leaned forward to feed the stove. As his coat fell from his shoulder, the collar dragged down with it, revealing a pale scar cutting across his ribs, a jagged mark, long healed but brutal in shape. Mia's eyes caught it, and her breath hitched. He didn't move to cover it. She didn't look away. The silence hung heavy between them, not awkward but dense, like snow before an avalanche. "What did they do to you?" she asked finally. He didn't raise his head. Just said, "Settlers caught me. Thought I was stealing a horse. I wasn't. Didn't matter." Her hands tightened around the fabric in her lap. "How long were you?" 3 days. Then someone came who knew the truth. They let me go. But the bruises stayed longer. Some still do. Mia swallowed hard. "You stayed among them after that?" "I tried. I thought I could make a place. Learn their ways. Prove something." "And did you?" "No. They took what I gave, then turned their backs." He didn't speak with anger. Just a kind of worn-out truth, like a door that had been shut too many times to surprise him anymore. Mia lowered her eyes. "It's not just men like you they punish. It's any kind they don't understand." Wakasa looked at her now. "What did they do to you?" Mia hesitated, then sighed, the kind that started somewhere in the bones. "I was promised to a banker's son in Virginia. My father arranged it. Said it was the best he could do for a daughter like me, plain, too opinionated, not soft enough to draw love on her own." Her voice cracked there, but she kept going. "I tried. I smiled when it hurt, laughed when I was mocked. I sat through sermons and dinners, nodding when I wanted to scream." Wakasa said nothing. He just listened. "1 week before the wedding," she said, "he left. Sent a letter saying he'd found someone better suited. My father drank himself stupid for a month. Then he packed us up, said the West was the only place stubborn things like me might still fetch a price." Her eyes burned. She blinked, ashamed of the wetness there. "We bought a claim. May caught fever. We ran low on coin. Then the wagon broke." She exhaled sharply, more bitter than breath. "And still," she said, "people will look at us and say we ran off with a savage." Wakasa reached for the kettle, poured her tea, without asking. The scent of spruce and earth rose like a bomb. "They will say many things," he said. "That is their way." She stared into the fire. "You don't seem angry." "I used to be," he said. "It made me hollow." She took the tea. Their fingers brushed. It was not a romantic touch, but it lingered in the mind, even after it passed. The wood in the stove snapped loudly. Sparks leapt. May stirred in her sleep, mumbling. Mia crossed the room to smooth her sister's hair, then paused, watching the carved figure in Wakasa's hands. "What are you making?" He held it up. A deer. Small. Simple. Elegant in its shape. "It's for her," he said. "She watched one yesterday near the trees." Smiled. Mia swallowed hard. "You noticed that?" "Yes." She said nothing for a long moment. Then, "No one ever made me anything." Wakasa placed the carving on the table near the lamp. "You were watching the wrong people." The words slid through her like soft rain. Later that night, she lay beside May, listening to her sister's breathing steady and deep. Across the cabin, Wakasa moved only once, to place a fresh log in the fire. The flame caught fast, and its glow swept across his face. He didn't know she was watching. In that light, he looked not like a man to fear, nor a man to pity, but something else entirely. Someone built from the long stillness of forests and the quiet weight of sorrow born without complaint. The next morning, as she folded blankets and packed what little they had, Mia kept her gaze on the floor. Wakasa handed her a small bundle, dried berries, flatbread wrapped in waxcloth, a strip of smoked meat. "You don't have to give us this," she said. He met her eyes. "I want to." She nodded, unsure what to say. Gratitude felt too heavy for the space between them, and yet not nearly enough. He turned toward the stove again, then paused. "I'll walk behind the wagon," he said. "No one will speak if I'm not beside you." She looked up sharply. "You don't have to hide." He didn't answer, just reached for his coat. Outside, the world gleamed. Snow everywhere, bright and endless. The sun had returned, but it offered no warmth. Mia climbed into the seat, reins in hand. May rested beside her, still weak but awake now, eyes open to the wide white day. Wakasa walked behind them in silence, his figure a steady shadow in the snow. He didn't speak, didn't ask where they would go next. But Mia felt the shape of his presence, like a hand at her back, keeping her steady when her own strength faltered. She didn't look back, but she knew, for the first time in a long time, that someone was walking behind her, not to judge or to use, but simply to keep her from falling. The road into town was rutted and half-thawed, muddy where the snow had turned to slush under the noon sun. The horses struggled in the mess, hooves sucking into the earth with each step. May leaned against Mia's shoulder, her bonnet pulled low to shield her healing eyes from a glare. She hadn't spoken much that morning, but her fingers still clutched the small wooden deer tucked into her coat pocket. Wakasa walked behind the wagon again, a silent shadow. He hadn't tried to speak, hadn't tried to stay. But when Mia looked back once, just once, she found him watching the sky instead of them. His face unreadable, as if whatever hope had flickered in the cabin was already being buried by the distance. They reached Saddle Hollow by late afternoon. The town hadn't changed since Mia last passed through, a wide street lined with false front buildings, shuttered windows, and too many eyes that pretended not to see. But they saw, always did. Mia guided the wagon to the edge of the mercantile. When she climbed down, May following more slowly, she felt the hush spread, like heat pressing on closed skin. Wakasa didn't enter the town. He stopped at the edge, hands at his sides, eyes lowered. A statement and a shield. Inside the store, the air was thick with dust and something worse. Disdain hidden behind polite voices. Mr. Tally, the grocer, offered a thin smile that didn't touch his eyes. Well, look who made it back. Thought you two were halfway to Cheyenne territory, or dead. We needed help, Mia said plainly. Someone gave it. He grunted. Wouldn't go around saying that too loud. Behind her, a woman whispered to another. Brought back a savage with M, so I heard. Not surprising, the other answered smug. Mia bought what they needed and left. Her fingers trembled around the coins. Outside, the marshal waited. He was a tall man with a gut that hinted at easier years. His badge gleamed too much for someone who rarely left the porch. Miss Thorne, he said, tipping his hat with the air of someone who believed the gesture made him kind. Word is you two been traveling with company. We accepted help, Mia replied. Nothing more. He scratched his jaw. Folks here don't take kindly to that kind of help. May, beside her, bristled. Then those folks are cowards. The marshal looked surprised, then annoyed. Watch that tongue, girl. You want to be welcome in this town again, you best start acting like ladies. Mia stepped forward. She nearly died. He carried her through snow and fed her when we had nothing. The marshal's smile was slow and full of something sour. You think that'll change how people talk? Mia looked at the faces gathering around them. Some curious, others mocking. A few pretending they hadn't come just to see if the rumors were true. No, she said, but it says more about them than him. She turned and walked past him, past the whispering mouths, toward the edge of town. May followed, limping slightly. Her breath came hard with effort, but her spine stayed straight. Wakasa was still there, just beyond the hitching posts, standing with his eyes on the trees beyond the last house. Ready, Mia said softly. He didn't move. You knew this would happen, she added. Yes. And you came anyway. He finally looked at her. You needed to get warm. That was enough. She blinked, slow, as if the words had weight that went deeper than just the surface. They walked for an hour in silence, back along the road that slushed beneath the horses and melted under sun. When the last roofs of the town were gone behind them, Mia pulled the wagon aside beneath a low ridge dotted with pine. Let's stop here for a bit, she said, helping May down gently. May leaned against a log, smiling faintly at the warmth on her face. Feels good, doesn't it, she said, being away from all that noise. Mia didn't answer. She turned to Wakasa. I never said thank you, she murmured. Not really. He shook his head. You don't owe me. I do. Not for saving her. For seeing her. For seeing us. Wakasa's eyes lowered for a breath. Then he looked toward the west. You should head on. There's a boarding house near Elk's Hollow. The woman who runs it, she's kind. And you? Mia asked. I go north. Mia hesitated, words gathering like storm clouds, but refusing to break. Then May's voice, small but clear. He should come with us. Mia turned, startled. May's cheeks were flushed, but not from fever now. You're the only one who didn't treat us like something broken, May said. You made me feel real. Wakasa stepped closer but didn't speak. I'll cook, May added. And Mia makes things grow. You wouldn't be a burden. Mia's mouth parted, then closed again. Her eyes stung. Wakasa looked from one sister to the other, searching their faces for something he couldn't name. Are you sure? He asked. Mia finally stepped forward. Not close enough to touch him, just close enough to be heard. I've never been sure of much, she said. But I know who didn't flinch when I was bitter. I know who carried my sister when I was too proud to ask. And I know I'm tired of walking away from things that feel right just because someone else might talk. The snow beneath them was wet now, softening into earth. Spring hadn't come, not quite. But the cold was breaking. Wakasa didn't smile, but his shoulders eased, just slightly. He looked up at the sky, and then slowly he nodded. Mia turned toward the wagon. We'll camp here tonight. Start fresh in the morning. May from a log grinned. 3 roads, 1 fire. Mia didn't know where the phrase came from. Maybe from some poem her mother used to say. Maybe from nowhere. But when Wakasa lit the fire that night, and they all sat near its glow, watching the last flakes fall soft and harmless into the grass, it felt true. The fire snapped bright in the bowl of the valley, fed by pine and twilight. Above them, stars pierced the sky like glass through velvet, sharp and clean. Mia sat with her knees drawn up beneath her skirt, watching the sparks climb, one by one, toward nothing. May slept beside her, a soft bundle of breath and quiet dreams. And Wakasa, steady as ever, carved his final strokes into the deer figurine he'd begun days ago, a second one smaller, this time meant for Mia. She hadn't known he'd been working on it, hadn't asked, but somehow she knew the shape was, for her, the moment she saw the curve of its neck. They hadn't spoken much that day. The weight of decisions lay thick between them, too complex for words. They had agreed to travel together, but no promises had been spoken. No futures mapped. It was still too new, still too raw, still fragile, like river ice under early thaw. But when Mia looked at him across the firelight, and he glanced up to meet her eyes, something passed between them that didn't need language. The knowledge of shared silence, of choosing each other without ceremony. The night deepened. Owls called from far off. The forest listened. Then came the sound of hooves. At first, it was faint, barely there, like a memory clawing at the edge of the dark. Mia rose fast, her hand instinctively going to the rifle tucked beneath the wagon bed. Wakasa stood slower, but his eyes sharpened. He didn't ask questions. He simply walked out into the clearing's edge and listened. The hoofbeats grew louder. 6 riders, maybe more, coming hard. Drunk voices cut through the stillness, and laughter, low, cruel, unbothered. Mia gritted her teeth. It's them. Wakasa nodded once. From Saddle Hollow. She crouched beside the wagon, nudging May awake. Sweetheart, she whispered. You need to stay down. Don't speak unless I say. May blinked herself into waking, her eyes wide with fear, but steady. She obeyed without a word, crawling behind the supply crates. Mia gripped the rifle with both hands, but her arms trembled. She hadn't fired in months, not in anger, and never to protect someone like this. The horses came into view, lanterns swinging from saddle horns, lighting up faces she recognized. Mr. Tally was among them, along with the trapper from the cabin, and a few others she didn't know by name, but remembered by reputation. Well now, Tally called, reining in. Ain't this a cozy picture? The others laughed. One spat. Another took a swig from a flask, then tossed it into the grass. We figured you'd hole up somewhere, the trapper said, voice slurred. Thought we'd say howdy. Make sure you weren't being held against your will. Wakasa stood between them and the wagon, unarmed. I told you in town, Mia called, stepping into the light. He saved us. We're not your business. Tally tilted his head. Now that's where you're wrong, Miss Thorne. When settlers start pairing off with redskins, that becomes everyone's business. You're turning your back on our kind. I'd rather turn my back on cowards, she snapped. That made one of the younger riders reach for his pistol. Say that again. Before Mia could speak, Wakasa raised a hand. He stepped forward, slow, calm, and placed himself directly between her and the threat. "I will not raise a weapon," he said, "but you will not pass." The trapper laughed. "That's so." He dismounted. Others followed. Wakasa didn't move. Mia raised the rifle, heart pounding, finger trembling against the trigger. She had one shot, maybe two. Then they'd be on them. A rider surged forward, and the gunshot cracked like judgment. Not from Wakasa, not from Mia. From behind them, May. She stood barefoot in the snow, her borrowed dress billowing in the wind, rifle barrel still smoking. Her hands were steady. "You'll leave," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "You'll leave now, or I'll find every one of your names carved into the trees when spring comes. Because that's what women do, we remember." The men froze. May walked forward, slow but sure. She passed Wakasa, past Mia, until she stood right in the open, wild-eyed and burning with a clarity that broke something in the cold night. "This man is the reason I'm alive. He is the only one who saw me as more than something to own or pity." She pointed the rifle higher. "I will not let you take that away." Tally raised his hands. "Now, let's not do anything foolish." Wakasa stepped beside May, his presence like a shield. Mia leveled her own rifle. "I'm done apologizing for who saves us." For a long breath, no one moved. Just firelight, just snow, just the raw, unblinking truth of three people who had chosen each other in the face of contempt. The riders shifted. One turned. Then another. The moment broke. Tally spat in the dirt. "You think you've won something here?" Mia stepped forward. "No," she said. "We built something, and you weren't invited." They left. One by one, without dignity, without noise. The last lantern disappeared into the trees, swallowed by night. The clearing was still again. May lowered the rifle. Her knees buckled slightly, and Wakasa caught her before she fell. Mia knelt beside them, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed. No one spoke for a long time. Then Wakasa looked to Mia, voice low. "I would have died standing between you and them." "I know," she whispered. He held her gaze. "I would still." She didn't answer in words. She just reached for his hand. For the first time, she didn't let go. Later, as the fire died down and May lay curled beside the wagon once more, Mia sat beside Wakasa, shoulder against his. "I don't know what this will be," she said. "What people will say." He looked up at the sky. "They'll say what they always say." She rested her head against him. "Then let them." The stars above were unchanged. The wind still roamed the trees. But something beneath them had shifted, soft, quiet, indelible. They had stood together in the cold and chosen fire. Sometimes people won't understand what you saved, or who saved you. They'll whisper, they'll point, they'll measure your worth against their small, frightened rules. But grace doesn't bloom in town squares. It grows in the silence between people brave enough to see each other. And love, it comes slow, not loud. Like snow melting in an open palm. Quiet, certain, forever.